Marcus Rashford is not in the squad for Manchester United's Europa League game against Rangers tonight. Alejandro Garnacho starts as Chelsea consider making a move for the United winger. And Manchester City complete their third signing of the window. Omar Marmoush joins in a deal worth just under £60 million. Hi, good evening. Welcome along to the Transfer Show. If you're with us at 5, you'll know that James Savundra and Mark McAdam are here, the men with their fingers on the pulse. We're also joined by the former Bristol City Sunderland manager, Lee Johnson. Great to see you, Lee. Thanks for coming in. Now, also on the way, Kyle Walker is in Italy to finalise his move to Milan. Yes, the breaking news is from Nottingham Forest. Chris Wood has signed a new contract with the club. And Lee, let's start with Chris Wood. No surprise, because he's in the form of his life, isn't he?
I think great timing, you know, especially out of contract at the end of the season. You know, his style is like a dying art now, isn't it? And, you know, he's had a fantastic season, both in terms of making everybody else better, but also obviously delivering himself as well. So, yeah, it's been an interesting career trajectory, and I think he fully deserves this contract.
What has Nuno done to him to make him this prolific?
Well, I think the playing style makes him important, and I think, you know, he's at the stage and age in his career now where he can carry that burden. You know, he's got the gravitas at the level, and I think confidence builds, but also, you know, understanding how to use your body, you know, dealing with all the frustrations and the angst of supporters and stuff like that. And he's just really settled, I think, into the right place at the right time, and then obviously his goal scoring record has been excellent as well.
Yeah, he's been absolutely brilliant. Congratulations to him. Right, we're going to talk Manchester United. They're playing this evening, Mark. Marcus Rashford not in the squad. Now, we're being told that if he doesn't get a move, he's got to be reintegrated. How on earth is that going to happen?
Well, it's going to be a huge challenge for Ruben Amorim, because it certainly looks like he's got a very unhappy player on his hands at the moment. Since virtually the first day of the transfer window, we've been talking about Marcus Rashford departing Old Trafford. We reported that his agents and brother were in Milan to talk about a potential move over to AC Milan and Serie A. That's not materialised at this stage. Then there was the interest from Borussia Dortmund. That's gone quiet. And most recently, we've been talking about Barcelona, but this afternoon on Sky Sports News, we revealed the hopes of any potential move to Barcelona are receding by the day. Deco, the sporting director at Barcelona, has said that his focus is on contract renewals, and we know that Barcelona are under huge pressure financially to just register the players that they currently have in the building, let alone signing additional players on loan. So this move potentially is being described as very unlikely. If it were to happen, it would potentially be late in the window. However, there are very few clubs in European football that could afford Marcus Rashford's wages. So therefore, they're going to be hoping that Manchester United do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to that situation. And I guess the club really has to decide, actually, can we try and get Marcus Rashford fit, healthy, happy?
He's not
on the
played
pitch.
for ages.
Not played, not been involved. Feels like he's on the periphery of that squad at the moment. Can we get him happy and maybe try and get something out of him? Or actually, is it best for him? And he even said to Henry Winter, maybe I need a new challenge. Going to be fascinating to see how this one plays out over the course of the next sort of week or so. But a lot of pressure on Manchester United, a lot of pressure on his camp. But at the minute, it feels like the options are dwindling.
Yeah, Lee, Mark's just laid it out there. What do United do with a player who's made it quite clear he wants out of there but can't get out of there?
I think the first thing is tonight. You know, to not be in the squad makes sense to me because it's an important game. I think it can become energy sapping for the squad. You know, everybody sort of wants to know what's going on. He's a big player for Manchester United, extreme talent. Listen, he'll play. You know, once that window closes, you know, it's a new mindset. The staff, everybody can reframe him, and he will play because he loves football. At the end of the day, it's finding that love again, both for the football and for the club. And sometimes I think, you know, the grass isn't always greener. It's easy to escape, if you like, certain factors within a club or a football team, but really Manchester United should be building around that talent and giving every bit of energy to allow him to get back to his rightful best.
How do you see it finishing?
I think he'll stay because I think, as Mark quite rightly said there, it's a very expensive deal for somebody. It's a highly talented player that should be coming into the prime of his career, and Manchester United have to do more to make those players feel special, feel believed in, and get the best out of them. So whether that's recruiting players to feed Marcus Rashford, or whether that's to go and win trophies that I'm sure Marcus is ambitious to do. On the same side and the flip side of that, it's really important that Marcus knuckles down, changes his mindset. He commits mentally to every day being the best version of himself.
Absolutely. Lee said it's important that, players feel valued. Garnacho starts tonight, but they've reduced his value, which seems to me that they will sell him. What's the latest on a possible move for Alejandro Garnacho?
Yeah, the Garnacho situation feels very different from the Marcus Rashford situation because as far as Ruben Amorim is concerned, Garnacho is part of his first-team plans. He's played consistently over the course of the last few months, aside from the Manchester derby, which he missed due to other issues. But Chelsea are now considering a move to sign him in this transfer window, or if not this January, maybe in the summer as well. So he's somebody they've been watching closely. They clearly admire him quite a lot. Now, we've been reporting over the last few days that Napoli were the front runners to sign him. They held talks with Manchester United. But the door has now been opened to Chelsea because we understand Napoli are looking at alternatives if they can't sign Alejandro Garnacho. They're looking at Karim Adeyemi at Dortmund. Now, Napoli don't want to pay more than £46.5 million for Garnacho. We understand United initially wanted around £60 million. They've lowered that slightly to around £55 million. That's we understand according to our colleagues at Sky in Italy. Chelsea have been kept in the loop about these discussions. United's preference clearly would be not to sell to a Premier League rival in the form of Chelsea. They'd rather, if they are to sell him in this transfer window, to Napoli, where they can just let him crack on with things as they have done with Scott McTominay. He's not going to come up against you. You're not going to be hurt by him if you let him go. But they don't want to sell him well below their asking price, what they value the player at. So it is possible, if Chelsea are willing to offer the money United want in this transfer window, that Chelsea get their man. We know that United and Chelsea, they're on good terms. They've got a good relationship. In the summer, they agreed the transfer of Jadon Sancho to Chelsea from Manchester United, along with an obligation to buy. The feeling is right now that Chelsea are just biding their time, but the admiration they have for Garnacho is very clear. United only want to sell him because they need to comply with profit and sustainability rules. They've been harmed by some of the business they've done over the course of the last few years, signing players for Erik ten Hag who now simply don't seem to fit into the system under Ruben Amorim, and that is why homegrown talent like Alejandro Garnacho, if they can get around £55 million for him, because they're not going to get that for Marcus Rashford in this transfer window, then that counts as profit when it comes to complying with profit and sustainability rules, because we know United are very close right now. We know they need to sign players, as we'll get onto later in the show, that do fit within Ruben Amorim's system.
Well, that's going to be my next point to you, Lee. United saying, oh, no, we don't want to sell him, but does he fit into the way Amorim plays anyway?
Yeah, I think he does, but I think it's the blend around. We were talking off air about, that decision to stick with the formation when it doesn't quite fit the players at this moment in time. And, is it the chicken or the egg? I believe personally you should play with the same principles, and then you should be flexible to show off the player in the best possible way for that formation. And I think, he's been strong, he's stuck to his guns, but obviously they've lost a lot of games. Now, again, it's disappointing that we're talking about a bright young talent having to move for the wrong reasons. Imagine if that was the class of '97 and you had to sell one of Scholes, Beckham, that type crew. Everybody, there'd be uproar. Yeah. So I think that we need a bit of an adjustment in football to protect those young talents, particularly homegrown. The Newcastle one move for obviously the boy Anderson to Forest as well stands out, but obviously Forest have really benefited from that. So I think it's something we've got to consider, particularly with young homegrowns.
Are you surprised, Mark, that they'd even consider letting someone like Garnacho go?
No, because football in 2025 is played in an accountant's office as much as it is on the pitch. Unfortunately, these rules have been brought in. They were brought in 2015 to try and make clubs sustainable, make them sensible, and then ultimately what they've developed into is to stop clubs punching into the top 6. You know, we don't want you to be too ambitious because we need to make sure we get into Europe. You know, that's essentially what the top 6 say. So things have been brought in to stop teams like Newcastle and Aston Villa go and spend because we know they have the spending power, but they're just not allowed to do it. And therefore, what the clubs have found is that actually we can make 100% profit on selling players from our academy as opposed to what would be the book price. If you bought someone for, say, 40 million and you wanted to sell them for 80 million, you wouldn't get 80 million to spend in the transfer window. You wouldn't even necessarily get 40 million. The book price may be 60 million because of an agent's fee, because of his wages, because of his bonuses. So therefore, you get 20 million to spend. So actually, selling one of our best players for 80 million doesn't work for us. But that kid in the academy that we're going to get £30 million for, that's 100% profit. And that's the problem with modern football and these rules. Now, we know that this season there are shadow rules working in place, which are squad to cost ratios. Now, they're not in effect in this season, but they could potentially be in effect for next season, so it would tweak it slightly. But this is modern football. Not only do you need to understand formations and tactics and VAR and offside, you also need to understand accountancy. And that's just part of the game now. And it's a shame, but that's the way it is.
Yeah. Biggest lesson is get your recruitment right, isn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely. That's the key.
That is absolutely the key. Speaking of recruitment then, James, who is it that United are looking at?
Well, Patrick Dorgu, the left wing-back at Lecce. We understand that United Director of Negotiations, Matt Hargreaves, has been out in Milan speaking to Lecce about a potential transfer. Now, Lecce do not want to let him go in this transfer window. We went to Napoli before. They've been interested in the player. And our understanding is if they're to buy him in this transfer window, they may loan him back to Lecce until the end of the season. So that's clearly something that Lecce would like to do. Now, they don't want to sell him. They're looking for around £38 million. We understand United at this moment in time looking something closer to around £30 million. So they're not a huge way off. Dorgu, we understand, wants to move to Old Trafford. And there's a hope that a compromise can be reached that suits all parties. I think if you ask Ruben Amorim right now if you could sign one position in this transfer window, it would be left wing back, because so far under his time at the club, he's had Luke Shaw injured already, Tyrell Malacia just coming back into full fitness. It looks like he may go on loan in this window. Diego Dallo's playing as a left wing back. He's right-footed. Sometimes Nusa Masraoui's had to play on the left-hand side. That doesn't suit him either. I think it would help him massively to have a left wing back in that system. I think you'd see a much better Manchester United with a natural left footer on the left-hand side. It's why they've also made checks on Tyrick Mitchell at Crystal Palace and Ryan Aït-Nouri at Wolves as well. I think this deal for Dorgu is something that could get done. I think, as far as Amorim is concerned, he'd be loved to get someone in that actually fits the profile for this squad, because as he's discussed on numerous occasions, this squad has not been composed to play his type of football, and that is why we're seeing the challenges that this squad are having, coping under Amorim.
So let's expand that. You've touched on it, but let's expand it. What comes first for a manager? Formation or personnel?
For me, you work towards the formation that you want, and you have to get the best out of that group of players at that moment in time. I really commend, the strength and the mentality to be able to say, OK, this is my identity, this is what I'm sticking to. But I think you've got to flex, not on principles, but on formation. And, when I look at Man United, and actually I was out in Nigeria with Christopher Vivell, who's the head of recruitment Manchester United, and we spoke a lot about this and the dilemma and the benefit, the pros and cons of both. If there's no risk to Man United going down, then it's obviously worth building for the future. And it looks like Europe's a long way off. So I understand it, but at the same time, confidence is really important in players, in fan bases, in board level. So the best way to gain confidence is to win football matches. So for me, to sum up the question, it's philosophy, it's principles of play, and then formation.
And hasn't Amorim got a bit of a free pass? Because he didn't want to come to United until the summer. So he's kind of got a bit of a way to be tough, say really outspoken things, say, I'm doing it my way, because United aren't going to go, right, we're going to sack you, because they fought so hard to get him, and he didn't want to come at the time they got him.
Yeah, well, I've really enjoyed his media. That was one of the things Christopher and I were talking about, the sheer velocity, the sheer size of Manchester United all over the world. puts you under pressure when you start to lose games, you know. But I've loved his interviews. I've really watched them closely. The language he's used, it's his second language, and he's nigh on been perfect, apart from the mistake which he owned this week. And to be fair, he's owned everything, so nobody's been allowed to think anything that he hasn't said, which I think has been really important. And I think, you know, Manchester United fans, that will sort of endear themselves to them. Which is obviously important, but you know, it's exciting times really to watch, and he's a great addition, I think, to the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, Antony on the bench this evening, but is he going to be a Manchester United player come deadline day, February 3rd?
Well, certainly not as far as our information is concerned. They have agreed a loan deal with Real Betis. It's almost close to completion. They're literally just waiting to sign the final contracts. Interesting that he's involved. Someone suggested earlier on today in the media that he would be involved for Manchester United. Whether he'll actually play or not, we don't know. Just imagine he comes off the bench and scores a couple of goals. What will that do to the potential move?
He nearly did against Southampton last week.
What will that do to the potential move? Will Manchester United turn and say, well, actually, maybe we need to hang on to him if he can score goals? But yeah, just waiting for official confirmation from that one. But deal essentially agreed.
OK, all right. And just to keep you updated, Spurs are now leading 2-1 against Hoffenheim. Right. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to reflect on what was another busy day at Manchester City. They are splashing the cash. Also, news from Arsenal and Nottingham Forest. And we're going to put Lee under the microscope. See you in a moment. Yeah, welcome back to the Transfer Show. It's happening. Breaking news. Mark McAdam.
Yes, significant news for Celtic fans, because Celtic are close to agreeing a deal for the Rennes winger Jota. Some of them know incredibly well. Of course, he had a loan spell which was converted into a permanent spell before eventually he moved on to Al Ittihad. Sky Sports News understands negotiations on a deal worth £8 million have reached an advanced stage, with the player keen to return to Glasgow. No surprise there. As I say, in 2023, he went to Al Ittihad. He then joined Rennes, but he's been frozen out, game time limited, not played since before Christmas. This would obviously represent a huge piece of business for Brendan Rodgers. They have been in the market for a winger, and it looks like they've got their man. And just one other final line to keep an eye on as well. Celtic and Rennes have been doing plenty of business this week, with Kyogo Furuhashi also set to join the League One club for £10 million. But the big news there, Celtic close to agreeing a deal with Rennes for Jota.
Mark, thank you very much. Now, the Transfer Show doesn't feel right without Chris Boyd on it. Well, I can tell you he's watching Man United versus Rangers tonight in the Europa League and joins us now. Chris, very good evening. The news about Jota on his way back to Celtic, has that ruined your night already?
No, it's definitely not. It's definitely not. I mean, listen, he was a fantastic player, there's no doubt about that. You know, to get the move that he got for the money that Celtic got, and then been able to bring him back for, you know, next to, well, I'm saying 8 million, but for what they sold him for, there's a huge gap in there. I'm sure he'll want to come back and prove a point. But the one for me, you know, and I think it would worry the Celtic fans, would be Kyogo leaving. You know, he has been the difference in a lot of games this season. He scores big goals. I get the fact that he's probably getting to the stage of his career where he wants to have that one, you know, his last big move, maybe earn, you know, top dollar. But and Celtic, their model, they're not going to break that for anyone. So for them to get 10 million is good business. But goal scorers are hard to come by, and Kyogo definitely falls into that category. So, you know, I'd imagine Celtic will be looking to do some more business other than just Jota.
Yeah, Kyogo, some player. Chris, let's talk about tonight then. Man United Rangers feels like a really good one. Marcus Rashford in the squad. What does that mean for his future?
Of course it's a good one, Mike. It's Britain's biggest two clubs going head to head.
That's funny.
You know, I think for Garnacho, it's an opportunity. You know, you go back to even the start when Ruben Almiron came in, and I think, I mean, Lee's in the studio as well, and any manager will tell you, you know, there is a clean slate there when you know, new managers arrive at football clubs. But if you don't toe the party line and put in the performances to keep yourself involved in the first team, then you're going to find yourself out it. That's exactly what's happened with Marcus Rashford. Yes, there's probably other things, bubbling away with that one as well. But Garnacho, you kind of get the feeling that if he has to go, it might be to generate funds for Manchester United to go and spend elsewhere. I don't think Ruben Amorim wants to lose Garnacho, but it might be that he has to go and strengthen the squad.
Sure. Let's talk about tonight, Chris. Will Rangers ever have a better chance?
Well, I think, Rangers in terms of European level this year away from home have been very good. They've picked up some positive results, even against Tottenham at home as well. But, you look at a vulnerability about them. The fans might be, a little bit anxious turning up, but Manchester United are still Manchester United and they want to go and put on a performance. It's still going to be very difficult for Rangers. As I said, they've got themselves in a good position in Europe, and probably if they win next week against Union Saint-Gilloise, that'll be enough to see them through. But, you look at tonight's game, it's huge for both. Rangers to keep that away record going in Europe, but obviously for Manchester United, it's not been good enough. I mean, not only under Ruben Amorim, but for a period of time, if you're a Manchester United fan, you'd be... It's worrying because it just seems to be getting worse and worse and worse. And the problem is they have spent absolute fortunes.
They absolutely have, like we have to get you on this show before your stint at 8 o'clock. Chris Boyd, thank you very much. Good to see you back with Chris at 8. He's watching that game. Right, let's talk Manchester City then. They are the big spenders in this window. James, they've been at it again today. For those who missed it, tell them what they've done.
Third signing of this window already for the Premier League champions. It looks like the champions of England could be the busiest side in the Premier League in this transfer window. We understand Man City paying around £59 million to sign Omar Mamouche. That was confirmed this morning. There'll be a plus a further £4.2 million in bonuses. He signed a 4.5-year deal. He'll wear the number 7 shirt. He's an Egyptian forward who idolised Mohamed Salah, now plays alongside him for the national team, will play against him in the Premier League now. And it really feels like City have bolstered their attacking options now, because it did feel like left themselves a little bit short when they allowed Julian Alvarez to leave to Atletico Madrid in the summer. Yes, that was a good deal they did in terms of the money they got in for him, but now it feels like in terms of their squad, they're well set now to salvage what has been a really disappointing campaign so far.
Lee, I know you've had a look at Mamouche. Tell us what sort of player he is.
Really good mover, first and foremost. Obviously comfortable on the ball. Typical sort of Pep/cheeky signing. I think that's important. But he's Mane-esque in terms of his speed and his ability to go past people, but also very flexible to play across that front line. Comes inside, good shooting quality on his right foot, and has a touch and feel, as well as that agility to drift past players. So looks like a really good, elegant player that I think will fit seamlessly into, obviously, that system of play.
That's really interesting, because I watched Paul Merson this morning and he said, can't see how the boy fits. Can you see what Paul's saying?
No, I think, the City group, from what I've seen, obviously, internally as well, and Manchester City, there's real detail with every pound they spend, let alone a figure and a fee that much. And I think that the club needed a boost, didn't it? It needed a boost of teams come in cycles, and that cycle just needed a little kickstart. So the lads as well will have to impress him. He'll have to impress them. So it just takes the level up a bit. And I think with Manchester City as well, you can't accuse them of just buying their way this year, because they've also blooded some young players, like James McAtee, Rico Lewis, again, like a lot of games. A lot of younger players have been on the bench. So, for the first time, they've had to go through pain. And they've gone through the pain, they've come out the other end, and I think they're showing their quality and obviously, as well, their power in the transfer market.
Lee, I just want to talk about something, because you actually spent some time last year working at Manchester City, coaching some of the players. You're in and around the setup. How important are some of the sort of non-negotiables for Pep Guardiola when it comes to signing new players? What do they look for in players? What do they want on the training pitch?
Yeah, well, it was this pre-season, so it's relatively fresh, and certainly fresh in my mind's eye, and obviously a great experience for me. But the detail that they go into is unbelievable. From the football IQ to the DNA to the stats to the amount of eyes they get on the player, and obviously the deep dive in personality as well. And because they have got deep pockets, they can go to extreme lengths to make sure that the player coming in is a good personality, fits the system. There's, the onboarding process they're able to spend money on. So it's a real holistic view of every player that comes through the door. So, I can't speak highly enough of the month that I had there and the people that I was involved in, because there's so many high quality practitioners in their field. And I think, it was only a matter of time before Manchester City obviously turned that round and become very, very strong again.
Do you think they've accelerated their plans from the summer to now because they needed that boost that you said?
Yeah, I think so. And that work would have been done, in that spell a couple of months ago. They would have sat down. And the beauty of the hierarchy at Manchester City is they'll sit with Pep and they'll say, what do you need? Because rather than sort of hit him with, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing that, they know they've got the best or one of the best in the world. And they can work together to find out what he requires to go and make them, whether it be Champions League winners or league winners again. And I think there's the trust there, and obviously that comes because he's in credit, but also, a fantastic coach, and that's been evident.
Indeed, and it seems, Mark, that he no longer needs Kyle Walker. Is he a Milan player yet?
Not yet. We're just waiting for official confirmation, but we brought you pictures on Sky Sports News earlier on today when Kyle Walker arrived in Italy around midday. You can see him being greeted by the paparazzi and a number of AC Milan fans, gives them a little wave there. We understand, obviously, Manchester City accepted Milan's formal offer for the right back. It's a loan with an option to buy, which we understand to be worth €5 million. He was going off for his medical at that point. When the medical's completed, he'll head to Casa Milan to sign all the official documentation and then get officially confirmed. Probably be later on tonight or tomorrow now before that gets done. But yeah, just a matter of time before the 34-year-old who won everything at Manchester City gets confirmed as an AC Milan player for the remainder of this season.
Is it time for Kyle Walker to move on?
I think in one sense it's quite sad, isn't it? Because, a top player that's won so much and been so sort of prominent, if you like, in their success moves on. But, understandable as a player as well. You want to experience different things. It's another, I suppose, good move for him. It's a top club in world football. And, it's a bit of an escape as well, I suppose, for things that go on closer to home. But I think, if you look at, he's still fit, he's still quick, he's still got that quality. And I think at a level which is maybe just a slightly lower intensity, he can actually come again over the next couple of years and probably play till he's sort of 38 or something like that.
Some player. So Walker on his way out. Two defenders in, a forward in, James. Are City going to go for a midfielder? We know Pep loves a midfielder.
Potentially, they've brought this rebuild forward, haven't they, by 6 months because of the form, because of the stagnation of certain players and the regression of certain players as well. So they felt they need to act now, and they've done that in terms of bringing young players. Mamouche, one for right now. But essentially looking for a number 6 for right now as well. We know Rodri's out until the end of the season. If you ask Rodri, he's trying to get back before that. We've got the Club World Cup to look ahead to as well. He wants to be part of that. There's no formality that City do anything else and that they spend any more money. I think it's worth putting into context how much they've spent in this window. They've spent more already than any Premier League club did put together, all 20 Premier League clubs put together last January, which shows you how quiet last January was. It shows you how active they've been already. One player that could be a target and could be on the move potentially is Douglas Luiz, who was once a Manchester City player before he joined Aston Villa. He was so successful there. Only joined Juventus in the summer, but it looks like he's going to leave Juventus in some capacity this month, whether that be on loan or whether that be as a transfer. You'd think that a loan until the end of the season would suit City right down to a T until they get to the summer. They've got a real chance of rebuild. Hopefully, Rodri there fully fit and firing again.
And just quickly on Man City, I like this thought, but we've got the Club World Cup in the summer. James mentioned it. Manchester City and Chelsea get £60 million each for taking part. If you win it, media reports suggest you could be looking at 120, 130 million pounds. Do you think Manchester City spending in January, maybe they're thinking we can't bring players in June because it's too late for the Club World Cup. But if we bring them in January, they've got 6 months to bed in, understand Pep Guardiola and the setup, and then we can have a real go at that competition, maybe win it, earn a load of extra money, which might pay for some of the business we do in January. Just an interesting thought.
I like that. What do you think, Lee?
I know for a fact that Pep wants to win that. That was the discussion while I was there. Certainly, you'd expect that because obviously he's a winner and everybody else is.
But a lot of people go, well, it's a month at the end of the season. The players will have no time for next season. They'll be knackered, but he wants to win it.
And I think his mentality will, bear fruit and certainly transcend into the players' mentality as well. Listen, these boys are playing unbelievable amounts of games at top levels, but they've also got a squad now, and I think these additions are important for that, to be able to rotate a little bit, to keep everybody as fresh as possible going into that, and then the start of next season comes around very quick as well. But I suppose that is one of the challenges of being a modern day player.
That is fascinating. I like that, Mark McAdam. I like that. You get a gold star. Thank you. Right, we're going to take a break. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk strikers. West Ham, are they closing in on one? Who needs it? Oh, Arsenal. Yeah. We're going to talk about them again. See you in a moment. Hello again. Welcome back to the Transfer Show. Now, if you were with us at 5, you'd have heard us talk about Matheus Cunha and whether his head has been turned. Lee, what do you do when a player's head's turned?
Yeah, it's difficult, particularly if there's games coming thick and fast, because the team always has to sort of take priority. Now, obviously, you've got sporting directors, you've got people that are in control of those type of transfers. But as a manager or a head coach, you have to quickly understand what the player's agenda is. I think that's the first thing. And then if the player's agenda is to go and the agent wants him to go, it's a different tack to one that maybe is actually angling for a new contract or something like that. Yeah. So everybody looks at it from a different lens, and you have to work out everybody's motives within that.
So have you experienced it?
Yeah, a number of times. I think Bristol City was an interesting time for that, because when there was Premier League interest, when we was in the Championship, it was life-changing sums for these guys. And, it becomes difficult. The agents are clever, they're bright, they play tricks. They actually ask for certain behaviours sometimes from the players. Sometimes the player, even though it's a positive thing, can actually get bogged down with it because they're overthinking about everything all the time. And I think my message is normally, look, you're contracted to the club, we've done everything right by you. You've got to continue to play as best as you can, because other opportunities can also come on the back of that speculation. So I've been in that situation as a player myself as well. Oh, yeah. And I think it was important to give of your best while you're at that club. And
did you do that?
I did do that, yeah.
Was it difficult to do that?
Not for me, but it probably wasn't the life-changing from Yeovil to Hearts. Probably wasn't as life-changing. Oi, maybe
play for Yeovil.
Maybe not as life-changing as, let's say, maybe Adam Webster, that went from Bristol City to Brighton.
Yeah.
Or Aidan Flint when he went to Middlesbrough, or Joe Bryan when he went to Fulham. These are the moves that stand out, where it was tricky scenarios to manage, but in the end, obviously, you kiss and make up and everybody's happy.
Sure. So what is the latest with Cunha, James?
Well, as far as Wolves are concerned, nothing, because they're adamant he's not for sale. But we understand that Nottingham Forest are one of 5 clubs, including Arsenal, they're interested in signing him in this transfer window. Forest have been preparing a club record offer to try to sign him in this transfer window. We know Arsenal are interested. Wolves play Arsenal at Molineux this weekend. Now, despite the fact I say that Wolves are adamant he's not for sale, we understand that if an offer came in for around £60 million, that could be enough to bring Wolves to the table. We know that an offer was on the table for Cunha in terms of a contract offer from Wolves. He's yet to sign that yet, but we understand Wolves are quite relaxed about that situation. But let's bear in mind where Wolves are right now. They're only outside the relegation zone. They'd love to be outside the Premier League top 6, but they're just outside the relegation zone on goal difference. Cunha has been a key part in keeping them out of the relegation zone. He's been sensational this season. He's scored into all the big clubs. He could be the main factor between whether they stay up or they go down. If he leaves, their chance of staying in the Premier League diminished quite significantly, unless they're able to bring in somebody like him in the final few days of this transfer window. Financially, Wolves are under no pressure to sell, but he's yet to sign a new contract at Wolves. But they're in a good position now, Wolves, in terms of financially not needing to let him go. But you'd think at some point between now and the next year or so, he'll get a move to a big club. It's whether it's going to be this January or it's the summer, because what we've seen from Cunha this season, I think it's unlikely with respect to Wolves that he's going to be there a huge amount of time longer than this.
Lee, James said it there. Wolves play Arsenal at the weekend. and you've got a player whose manager said, I'm not happy with his body language this week. How do you deal with this situation?
I think good communication's the first thing. The key word there for me was relaxed, because it leaves the door open for a big offer, but at the same time they believe in him and they want him to stay and play and potentially sign a new contract. So from a managerial point of view, you just got to make them feel like they belong. He's obviously an important player. The team trust him. He trusts the club. They've been good for him. It's an important stage of the season. But however, if there is that big offer, you've got to be ready to use that money to obviously make the team better. So from a managerial point of view, it's good communication, show that love, and then obviously really try and cajole them into feeling better and wanting to play.
So it's Arsenal at Molineux this weekend. We've been talking about Arsenal a lot in this whole transfer window. Are they going to get a striker? Can you understand the fans' clamour to get someone in the door who can play up front for Arsenal?
I can, but I also understand the club's mentality, because it's not easy in this window. There's a tax involved, especially if you're Arsenal and you're in the Premier League, to sign in any striker. And they'll want to get that one right. When you're spending huge money, we've seen a lot of wasted money in the past, particularly on strikers. To get a ready-made one is extremely expensive. To get a big man, so you're always looking for the next emerging talent. And I think they'll be, brave enough, if you like, to take that criticism and then do it when it's right. OK. Well,
strikers are, of course, a bit of a theme. So what about West Ham, Mark? Are they closing in on one?
According to our colleague Sky in Germany, they are getting closer to one. Andre Silva, 29-year-old striker, currently at RB Leipzig. West Ham are in advanced talks with Leipzig over a potential deal. Now, we understand that a loan is being discussed with the option to turn that into a permanent move in the summer. Talks are continuing between the two clubs at the moment. Another player just to keep an eye on for West Ham fans, the Ajax striker, Brian Broby, is another player on West Ham's list. Obviously, Graham Potter, new into the club. There's talks about Kyle McCauley going in there as well. They've got a really good working relationship when it comes to recruiting players. Obviously, Kyle was at Chelsea with Graham. Kyle was also at Brighton with him as well. So, shows you the sort of direction that they're going in. But we know that West Ham desperately need a striker. Injuries to Jarrod Bowen, Mikel Antony are not going to be available for some time. This is a position they absolutely need to recruit for in this window. So Andre Silva, a name to keep an eye on.
OK, all right, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to get Lee to talk us through what it's like being a manager in this window. And he's going to share some of his transfer tales. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the last part of the transfer show. It has flown by, but we've got a manager in the hot seat, so we're going to grill him. Right. January transfer window, Lee. Just how tricky is it for managers?
Well, I think it's exciting. You've got to think that you're trying to add quality to your team. That's the first thing. So, it's not easy, because you've got to select or be part of the selection. You've got to present, because you need potentially the money from the ownership. You've got to onboard very quickly. And then obviously you've got to win games, which is very important. So I feel like, for fans, it's fantastic. I've enjoyed generally transfer windows, and I've had good Januaries and I've had a couple of bad Januaries and players that haven't quite made the impact that you like. And, the list, depending on where you sit at the table in terms of that division, you might be looking for a striker, you might have 10 strikers that are affordable, available, accessible, but in January they've also got to be fit, because you can't take 8 weeks getting them fit. So, like you say, if you're buying from a lower level, there's a tax for it. A higher level, they're probably playing on the 21s and maybe can't quite get to the tempo. So you've got to balance it off. And, I remember some windows that we've had like 15 strikers and ended up like getting 8 or 9 on the list last minute. And, it's difficult. So you've got to blend around it as well. Sometimes you're signing partnerships, not just one player, because at the lower levels that becomes really important. So, yeah, I think it's fascinating. It's been an interesting part, something that I've generally enjoyed. And it's actually been good in this last 6 months getting to as many games as I can, because while you're in the hustle and bustle of it, you can't really scout per se.
Yeah.
Whereas at the moment, I'm able to do that.
Come on, name some names. Who have been your most successful signings?
I think, the personality is important as well. Like the likes of Josh Brownhill, who 150,000 from Preston sold for 7 million, but it was more about his personality, his development from boy to man. I was with his family actually the other day at the Burnley game, which was lovely to see, and they're very grateful for what we did for him at Bristol City, but really what he did. I think Adam Webster's another good example. 2.9 million purchase, sold for 25. A year or so later. So, there's also been some great players inherited along the way, like Corey Smith as an example, now in the twilight of his career, but took him to Oldham as a 19-year-old, and then Bristol City signed on and inherited him there. So these are good lads, good personalities that are fundamental to knitting the team together. And whereas Sunderland, Ross Stewart is, the list is endless really for how many high-quality players and people that we've had. And I think in your recruitment process, the personality is as important as the individual DNA of the position.
Mark, you're our EFL expert. Those names resonate with you?
It's funny, actually, you said Josh Brownhill. I met his dad about 3 weeks ago after a game. Gary? He came up to me in the car park at Sheffield United and said, "Oh, thanks for saying such nice things about me boy." I said, "Well, who's your boy?" He said, "Oh, Josh." I said, "Well, yeah, I know Josh." So, it's, that's the thing, at that level, you don't get a huge pot to play with in the EFL. You have to get your recruitment spot on. You can't make mistakes. And you've seen it with Premier League sides now. Historically, they make a few mistakes, no problem. Now you have to get it spot on. And that's what it's like. You're almost juggling someone else's money, and your job depends on whether you get these things right or wrong. You talk about the ones that you're pleased with. What about the ones that got away?
Yeah.
There's a few of those as well. I think the one that stands out is Alphonso Davies. He came to, I know, I'm not sure if it was my fault or my assistant's, but Vancouver.
Blame the assistant.
Yeah, why
I
not?
do.
Vancouver came to play a behind closed doors game.
He texted me and said it's your fault.
I had a board meeting and I couldn't watch the game, and assistant Jay McAllister's rang me and said, "Oh my God, I've just seen a 15, 16-year-old that's unbelievable. Like, we have to take him, we have to get down here. I can't, I've got a board meeting." And then he was badgering me. 2 or 3 years later, obviously, he turns out to be what he is, and he hasn't stopped reminding me since. But there's been a few, Ollie Watkins just down the road at Exeter.
Really?
Was one that, we should have got. We're disappointed that we didn't. Goriakis at Sunderland put a bid in that was probably derisory, given the scenario. But, I think it's good now. I've got 12, 13 years in the game looking at those type of players. You start to spot who's going to come through just that little bit better. You can piece together the story and then obviously hopefully add some value as a coach to be able to really accelerate these players' value for the club on and off the pitch.
We've only got 30 seconds or so. What's next for you? Are you going to get back into management?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I've spent this time really trying to develop. I'm really curious as an individual. I've just come back from Denmark, FC Copenhagen. Looked a lot on culture because I think that's really important. As well as try and give a little bit back, but also continue to develop and progress as a coach. So yeah, I'm ready. I'm really sort of enthused about the next one. I've had some good chats and it's starting to move now on a number of both home and abroad. So yeah, just full of energy, ready to go.
Well, we wish you the best, but if that doesn't work out, come back and work with us because you're brilliant.
Nice.
Lee Johnson, absolutely fantastic. James and Mark, brilliant as well. Just to update you, Spurs snuck past Hoffenheim. They beat them 3-2. And, of course, we're building up to Manchester United against Rangers at Old Trafford. Just some team news. Onana drop. Bayindir plays. Garnacho starts. Rashford not in the squad. And Antony on the bench. The guys on Sky Sports News will take you through the whole evening on that. It feels like a crucial one. We're back with the Transfer Show tomorrow. We'll see you then. But thank you very much for joining us. It's been a blast.